Welcome to the TRXL podcast. I'm Evan TRXL, and in this episode, I welcome Craig Barbieri. Craig has spent nearly the last 2 decades in the trenches of design technology, standing up new tools and standards, guiding teams through change, and translating business goals into practical digital workflows. From the early days of Revit rollouts and AIA large firm roundtable meetups to coordinating with contractors and reality capture in the field, his through line is simple: make technology serve projects, people, and the business, not the other way around. The thread I'm pulling on today in this wide-ranging conversation is the value of seasoned, battle-tested leadership. Craig's stories aren't theory, they're scar tissue and pattern recognition from 2 decades of doing this work inside real firms with real constraints. His playbook will surface during the conversation, including how firms can structure training time, where to invest first for outsized risk reduction, and how to frame ROI so that your teams and your CFO actually get on board. As usual, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. You can find it directly in your podcast app if you are a supporting member of TRXL Plus, and if you're a free member, you can find them at the website, which is trxl.co. So now, without further ado, I bring you my wide-ranging conversation with Craig Barbieri. Craig, great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, nice to be here, Evan.
I think our paths have crossed, many times at LFRT meetings throughout the years, things like that. You've just recently gone through a career transition, and I would love for you to be able to tell your story today and provide some insights, especially from the practice side of implementation, strategy, adoption. I don't know, but we'll see where the conversation goes when it comes to actually implementing technology in large architectural firms. But it's great to have you here, and I would love it if you could just kind of kick us off and tell a story of how you got to where you are now. I think you've been at many firms over the last couple decades. Just give us a kind of an overview of that.
Yeah, well, so I went to graduate school for architecture, and here I am, an architectural technologist and fractional CTO, which is, if you ask me in the year 2000, where I would be in 2025, I would not have said, where I am, right? What I'm doing. I was all set on being an architect until I actually started to practice. And the reality of architecture and my own personality, my own sort of likes, led me down the road, always heading down the road of technology and innovation and pushing the latest software and the latest tools, the latest hardware forward. And so the reason I got into the role that I did was really because I was an early Revit adopter, as I'm sure a lot of people are. I had the hardest time finding a firm that in Philadelphia that was using Revit.
Yep.
And so I was working for this design firm here, Daroff Design, who did a lot of hospitality, very famous for doing hospitality work, and airports and that kind of thing. I was there, and I heard from a friend that a firm called Kling Stubbins was going to start the largest Revit project ever attempted.
Okay.
And I was like, my eyes lit up. I was like, wait, I have to get in this project.
What year is this? What year are we talking here?
This was 2007.
Okay.
2006, 2007. Because I joined Kling Stubbins 2007. So, and I joined the interior design group because they were the only ones who needed someone at the time, and I was like dead set on working on this project because I'd been using it for so long, right? And finally, I could use it in a sort of more professional, like a big project in a real firm.
Mm-hmm.
And from then it was helping get that project off the ground. There was a great team working on it, a great IT team as well, installing riverbeds and a lot of technologies that were really new to me and the entire firm, and I think probably the industry as well at that time. And then I just kept sort of harping on how wonderful Revit was, and I did like little presentations in the company and had like wine and cheese discussion forums and pulled together other sort of like-minded people in engineering and interiors who were like seeing the value of Revit. And then one day the CEO came to me, Mike Lorenz came to me and asked me if I wanted to go down this road and be the director of practice technology at the firm. And
Okay.
And then that was it. I was like, yes, sir.
Were you so you were voluntold based? I mean, he gave you the option, but you were it was a good alignment for you.
It was because I still love designing things, but I'm sort of at home with technology.
Yeah,
I like the tools. I like the tools a lot. I like the hardware. So when he asked me, I had actually already proposed the idea to him in an email, but didn't really expect too much out of that, and then voila.
When you sent that email, were you looking at other firms and like things that they were doing? Was just this is just something you saw the need for in your own firm? Like, where did that come from?
So yeah, I've always been sort of driving down the road with blinders on when it came to Revit. Like, I had just learned about Autodesk University. Basically that same year, and the IT guy said, "Oh, you should go to this conference. Why don't you go?" And I was like, "What is this Autodesk University? Isn't that like an AutoCAD thing?"
Right.
And so I went, and it was huge eye opener, of course, right? Because here are like a bunch of like-minded people, and they're talking about the software that I think is fantastic, and I hadn't realized, honestly, that other firms were heading down this road and were running into the same sort of issues and having the same challenges that we were, outside of, like, I guess the Philadelphia Revit user group, which a friend of mine, Robert Manna, and I started around that time. It was 2009, I guess, maybe 2010, something like that. So.
Yeah.
I'm dating
Isn't that
myself.
interesting to like firm? I think that's just a common trait amongst firms. It's like it's just us. It's just us that are dealing with it. And then you go to AU or you go to an LFRT meeting and it's like, show of hands, who's dealing with this? And all the hands go up, right? It's like, oh, okay, I don't feel so alone anymore. What are you doing about that? What are you trying? And then it is just like opens up the conversation of, oh yeah, we're all dealing with the same stuff.
Yeah, especially the LFRT. It was especially unique with that because they were large firms, similar kind of large issues. It's actually where I met Anthony Houck. He with the first they called it the BIMI. I don't know did you attend that?
I did not. No.
I was going back. The BIMI and Anthony came and he gave out a little presentation, and I think that was his first time.
Was that when he was still at Autodesk, or was that
still at Autodesk? Yeah, Autodesk. This is 2000, whatever, 2008.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No,
Craig, I'm a few years behind you in like adoption of this stuff. I remember I started at HMC around the same time that you just mentioned, like 2007.
Okay.
Revit was not on the list of things to do yet. At least it wasn't publicly like, oh, we're doing it until 2009. That was like the date when it was like all projects are going. And of course it wasn't all projects. And there were many, declaring bankruptcy during a Revit project. It just got too much. Just export to AutoCAD. Like, we saw every version of that, for the next couple of years. But, and I don't think I became aware of AU until 2014 even. Like, it wasn't even a thing that.
Oh, wow.
Because and so I think like thinking about how difficult it was to get outside of the silo of your own firm and who's talking and where are they talking and is anybody talking about this stuff publicly? You're digging through forums on what, like, that's all it was back then. It was just forums. There was barely any social media, right? I think Twitter started it. Like, I started on Twitter in 2006, 2007, and we built an architectural community, but it wasn't around technology. It was just around the broader practice of architecture. So, yeah, I mean, these were early days for sure. And just finding this stuff, it was all about your network, your personal network, I think.
Yeah, I think that is that's one of the aspects of, especially on the technology side, the architectural technology side, that was just really valuable in my career, and I think in my colleagues' careers as well. Is that, like, so I've since built some great relationships. And then, one of the reasons why Robert and I started the Philadelphia Revit user group way back when was because we came back from AU and we were like, I want to like recreate that kind of atmosphere where we can talk about these things and figure out see how other people are accomplishing this using the tools, and it's that creation of that community has really been sort of essential with getting me, really keeping me in this role for so long too. And I'm not sure I would have stayed in as long as I have without that community.
Yeah. So you became practice technology director, and where'd that go?
Yeah. So I rolled out Revit firm-wide, with, help of a lot of people, of course. And then Jacobs came in and acquired us. Jacobs Engineering, it's a big company, 63,000, but their architecture group, their global buildings group was, 4,000, I think, 4,000 people. Still, that's a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Changed the dynamic significantly. And they actually had 4 or 5 other directors of design technology, I think they called them. Sean Foster and everybody. But anyway, so Jacobs came in, and I helped that was really my sort of first experience with an integration, with a acquisition merger integration, which is pretty interesting to see that. And so we went, basically to all of the different offices. Jacobs really kind of worked much like a lot of large firms work, where each larger sized office had almost their own standard and their own way of doing things.
Yes. Yeah.
I've seen that, just throughout my career. Basically every firm is every large firm, at least, is very much like that. It's hard to maintain a set standard across the board. But we had, at Kling Stubbins, we had developed a lot of content and a lot of workflows that made us really good at what we were doing in building information modeling. So, they adopted a lot of those techniques. Then I moved on to where did I go after that? Maybe Hanoni, which is that's an engineering firm. Oh wait, yeah, Hanoni. I think it's Hanoni. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you're going through right now. Wait, what? The timelines are blurred.
Yeah. But yeah, a long history of a great bunch of firms, I think, honestly. So that's and that's what's really given me, I think, a perspective that, like, when I joined Ewing Cole, there were people there that had been there for 40. Like, one of the guys who worked for me had worked there he celebrated his 40th year. And I was like, wow. I didn't do that.
Right.
I mean, he's very good at what he does, right? He's actually an Autodesk expert elite. candidate person. I don't know what you call them that. Anyway, I owe a lot to the number of different roles I've played in different firms. Everything from engineering, architecture, interior design, construction, high-end design. So it gives you, I think it gives you a lot, a much broader perspective of what's important, especially construction. I don't know if you've had any experience with construction firms. That was a nice break from the design technology realm to dive into construction technology, because you ever wondered what happens to your firm's models once the contractor gets it?
Yes. Right? Tell us.
Some of them are used and some of them are.
Right.
But that was such a great experience. It was nice to see the model have its sort of its life continued. Yeah. Not in the way that I always imagined, but just in a very useful way. And I actually was lucky enough to work with I'm blanking on his name, but the developer of Assemble, Autodesk acquired Assemble, right? Mm-hmm. He actually works at the construction company that I was working for, and we had some good discussions. But it was nice to be able to see that building information model go from the design side to the construction side and be made use of and sort of carry on its life.
But you also learned what was unuseful about those, and then that informed. When you go to you and Cole, right? It's like, oh, well, here's what's happening with this stuff. So here are some things that we should be doing that address those issues, so that they don't become issues during CA or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about Avail. Is your team struggling to find the BIM assets they need? Avail's content management system simplifies access to all of your firm's content in one easy-to-use platform. No matter where your files live or what type of files they are, you can easily search and access them from Avail. Now, designers can consistently find and reuse all types of content. So what does that mean? Well, standards-compliant models and drawings are easier to create. The documentation process is less chaotic. New hires are easier to onboard. Projects are delivered faster with fewer errors. You get the idea. Visit getavail.com to try Avail for free and request a free demo. That's getavail.com, GETAVAIL.com. My thanks to Avail for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. And now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, and actually one of the first things that I did at you and Cole was institute or bring on a full-time project coordinator, basically a virtual design construction person to review models, help teams coordinate before it gets to the contractor. Yeah. And everything's got to change.
Right. It's interesting to think about that from an incentives or just a project goals perspective. Mm-hmm. Like the goal of an architectural model is to get a permit and to create a set of drawings, right? And the contractor is like, hey, give us the BIM model. I mean, a lot of times it's in the contract too. Like, yep, it's going to go on. And then they are like, wow, this is not useful for our purposes, for quantity takeoffs, for whatever those things are, right? For bidding things out to their subcontractors and trades and things like that. And so then they end up rebuilding a lot of stuff. And in the meantime, it's like you hear a lot of the horror stories and it's like, oh man, architects aren't giving us what we need. And it's like, well, that's not what the architect's actually getting paid for, right? The architect's it's a different set of incentives and it's a different purpose. And there's many different models for many different reasons. It could be energy modeling, it could be visualization, it could be permits, it could be pricing, it could be all these different things. But man, there's like this focus of, well, we've got to do our job and that's what it should be for. And that is just simply not the case. And I think that's one of the difficulties around model-based delivery, right? It's like, well, cramming all the purposes into one model makes it a really unruly model most of the time, especially on these huge projects.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. The coordination aspect of, I know it was actually the first time I'd done it in an architecture firm, like brought on a coordinator into my team whose specific job was just to coordinate projects and pull the team together and make sure that everyone was attentive to clashes and so forth. And super valuable. Everyone, like after the first session with Lauren Tarvin, was still there. The discipline leader of engineering came to me and he said, "Oh, this is fantastic. We want to be able to do this on every project," because there's I think there's like a level of quality and you sort of have you have some respect for the team. They can put together a really high quality model, and have the confidence in delivering that model to a client or a contractor, and knowing that there aren't many mistakes in this, if any, right? There are always mistakes, but
yeah,
there aren't that many mistakes. We've run through it.
Mm-hmm.
The value of that, on the flip side, you get fewer RFIs and fewer change orders, of course. And there's, you can put value on that. I wish there was a way to track all of those things that all of those change orders that didn't happen and all of those RFIs that didn't happen.
Yes.
But that's never the case. And so when it comes to the value of these technologies, it's so hard to justify to someone.
Yes.
Like, you're reducing the number of change orders, you're reducing the number of RFIs, you're reducing a whole bunch of different things. And there is, there's a number that's tied to that nobody ever sees and is like next to impossible to communicate.
Right.
But I digress.
Well, I like this digression because I think this is a reality in firms, which is, a lot of times you're going to have non-practice people asking those kinds of questions, right? Because it's going to go to them. Maybe they're on the, the budget approval side of things. And it's like, well, prove that this investment is worth it, right? And so what's the ROI on implementing this software, this training, whatever those, the steps to getting there are for adoption and implementation and all those things? It's a big investment. Bigger the firm, bigger the investment, right? And so what's the ROI? And like you just said, it's extremely difficult to actually put numbers on those things because we're not tracking the things that didn't happen because they didn't happen, right? And so a lot of times that's what the software is doing. It's keeping those things from happening because of a better way of doing something. And so what kinds of arguments did you make in firms when it came to, to supportive arguments of implementation for things, when it came to having those kinds of conversations so that you could really implement the value that you saw in what some of these solutions were offering?
Well, so without like picking one out, it's hard to
because I know it's like and in specific examples I could see would be difficult, maybe not the most useful, but it's like these are the kinds of struggles that a lot of people have in firms, and I'm curious like how you handled that. And because like part of it is like painting the vision of who we can become and what we can accomplish. But again, it's still even difficult to measure that because that takes a long time to actually happen it requires adoption, it requires standards, and people sticking to those standards and not going back to their old ways of doing things and using their secret stash of content on their own hard drive. And like, there's so many versions, or, you know, there's a lot of different things you could look at there that really need to happen for that bigger value to come to fruition. And I'm just curious if you have any kind of big high-level examples of how you accomplish anything like that in a firm. Because again, I think this is the kind of thing that a lot of people struggle with. It's like, make the case. Yeah. And the case is usually a vision. And it's like, well, here's where we could be. And so I'm just curious if you have any pointers in that direction, because I think it's so valuable.
So whenever I go down that road of sort of justifying or painting a picture of the value of a new technology, I always try and align it with the firm's overall mission or goal or the strategy that the firm's trying to align with their goals. So the best way to communicate value is through examples. And like one that comes to mind has to do with laser scanning. So purchasing a laser scanner is not an inexpensive, endeavor, right? It's a pricey little piece of hardware. But the value there is incredible. So one example I have is actually while I was at the construction firm, was we had one project start out. We'd gotten the Revit model from the architecture firm, and the superintendent was lining everything up, doing some sort of spot checks of dimensions, and he found that the elevator core was 18 inches off. Yeah,
just a little bit off.
Just a little bit. And this is a lab. This is a lab building. So the core is 18 inches off. It's like, how does this happen in this day and age? Perfect justification for a laser scanner, right? So we rented a laser scanner, got out there, scanned it. Yeah, sure enough, the core was off. There was some structure off as well. Send that back to the architect to redesign. Months later, they've got everything, corrected, and the project can start up. But we're talking, a significant amount of time in relaying out this lab project that could have been entirely avoided if they had just done a cheap laser scan at the outset. It was like $2,000-3,000 to scan an empty shell.
Yeah,
with a scanner. It totally worth it. Why that's not done just as a standard for every project, every renovation project or fit out project? I'm not sure. I think it should be. But the value there is huge, and that's just a very visible way of seeing that.
So you can actually take a monetary figure and apply it to that and say, like, we could potentially avoid this on every single project by doing this, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes down to that too, where it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense because it's something architects love, right? Risk avoidance. And so it's like this, if that risk is a reality, especially on complex projects like a lab building where every inch counts, right? I mean, literally every inch counts. And it does take months to redesign around an 18-inch bust. That is where, okay, you totally made the case. It totally makes sense. And what's so interesting to me when you're having those conversations with somebody is if you can create an example where it totally makes sense to that person, they will never question it again. Mm-hmm. It's like done. Because I've talking to a CFO who's going to make that decision, if it's a big spend, it's like, oh, okay. I totally get it now. And now that decision has been made and we can move on. And I like that there's not this constant re-questioning about things like that when you get the right CFO in place, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always important to have a good relationship with your CFO.
Yeah, absolutely. I often find that CFOs are just as excited about innovation and technology in firms as the technology people are. They're just coming at it from a different perspective. Of course, they want the firm to be profitable. They want the firm to be pushing. They want the firm to be, differentiated from the other firms that they're competing against. And so, I mean, just to kind of double down on what you just said there about having a good relationship with them, I think they can be a fantastic partner a lot of times. I've presented. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're kind of an essential partner, especially for big ticket items.
Yeah, I presented. I did a presentation to the large firm roundtable CFO group a few years ago, and they were more excited. I mean, you go to an LFRT meeting for the CIO group and the CTOs and everybody's like, oh yeah, yep, me too. Like the CFOs were like, all the hands went up. There were so many questions. What are you seeing? What do we do? And it was really, really refreshing. I was not expecting that from that group, but just to kind of reinforce what I was saying, that they're great partners, and you're saying essential partners, right? Like that to me it's an amazing group of people who really care. And so again, a tip for the audience, like that's a great relationship to build for sure.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in-person events and a podcast co-hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company Avail, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. So where did you go from there? Let's talk about kind of, you're seeing the value of technology playing out in different ways, right? You're seeing it from different angles. You're seeing it from architecture, engineering, and construction. And this is becoming, I'm assuming, a valuable feedback loop for you, because not only are you deploying technology across large teams that have, different behaviors and through mergers and acquisitions, which even takes that to a different level, right, of people who do things their own way, but then also kind of seeing where the models are going beyond that. And I'm assuming that's creating a really good reinforcement loop for you to build a really solid foundation for technology in AEC firms.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, plus having those experiences just answers a lot of questions. If you're strictly stuck in one discipline, dealing with the technology of one discipline, for the most part, you don't get that sort of more robust understanding of, electrical does circuit panels, and there's a degree of automation there, and a number of different activities and requirements around what they do that architect or architectural technologists, strictly speaking, may not realize. And so and that goes for like civil engineering too, and civil 3D, and how that integrates and plays back and forth. It's having that sort of broader understanding of the different technologies, I think, has served me well. If I guess I have yet to see or drive forward an entirely sort of fluid workflow from discipline to discipline, from concepts to occupancy, which I would love to see that. I would love to see a really fluid workflow where everything ties together, and there's a lot automated, but there's a lot of design work in there, and there's a lot of use of the data. downstream. But I haven't gotten there yet, and I think that's where I think we're all sort of striving to get to that point. I would have hoped to have seen that by now. If anyone has
What
that.
do you mean when you say a fluid workflow? Do you mean like less starting over mid-process, like when you switch phases? Do you mean like just explain what you mean by fluid workflow and kind of this? Because that to me is one of the things that you keep saying is like that's the promise of technology, right? Is like
right.
So explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. I mean, we can see parts of that, right? So one of the greatest things I think for our industry, for at least for Autodesk users, has been ACC, where you can have multiple firms, syncing and linking models and being able to see each other's work live. In most of the projects that at Ewing Cole, at least, everything was linked live. And that kind of back and forth where, let's say a consultant engineer makes a change, you reload that model, there's that change. And then that's fantastic. There's no, let's transfer the models at the end of the week kind of thing.
I was just thinking, man, what we have gone through to get to this point, right? I was just thinking back of FTP sites and, okay, everybody, publish a new send your new models over every week, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe Monday, like we're not ready yet. There was just so many pieces to that puzzle back then, and a lot of that has shifted for sure.
Yeah, but so that piece has been really solved, right? But it's getting to that point. A lot of firms still go from Rhino or some other 3D modeling tool to in early concepts, and sometimes through schematics before they get into the Revit and the documentation.
Or two models, right? Like you've got the Rhino model you got the Revit one for the floor plans, and you've got the Rhino model for the massing, for example.
Yeah. And ideally that you'd stop work on the Rhino model at some point and carry on with Revit. But I've seen too many large projects where the Rhino model is still in late CDs is still being worked on.
Yeah.
Which is too bad, because that's a duplication of effort, right?
Yeah, it is. But then, I mean, you can totally see why it happens too, right? It's like the different modeling applications have different strengths and speed, and it, right? Like these tools are built for different reasons. And so you can see it, right? Especially with like visualization, right? Oh man, like we just want to make it look right so that we can get that rendering. And it's like, well, the construction document tool is not the right tool for that because it's focusing on something else. So I get it. And I agree, like, oh, it would be great. This is where we're really seeing the tide starting to turn, I think, though, and the maturity is where this is going to be, like, if it's all worth it or not, like it's going to come to fruition. You can see you can see the intent with these BIM 2.0 tools, with Arcol and Snaptrude and Giraffe and these kinds of tools where it's like, okay, they're early stage planning, they're tied to numbers, they're tied to budgets, they're tied to massing, and they can do some floor plans, and they can send stuff to Revit for documentation. Even Forma is doing this, right? Still relying on Revit for that documentation side of things, but it's helping us make better decisions earlier with these other tools. And at the same time, like that maturity isn't there, and so we still can't do it all in the one tool because it takes years and maybe decades to get to that point.
Right. Yeah. I do like. I haven't played around with Snaptrude in a while, but Forma I have, and I like what they're doing. I've been an advocate of that for early design, and so it's actually been sort of odd, because it seems like from all appearances it looks like it's like the perfect tool, right? But a number of architects have been like initially resistant to using it at Ewing Cole, which isn't everybody. Which is,
But as we talked about earlier, when you go to the meetings, it's like, yeah, everybody. So it might be indicative of what's going on everywhere.
yeah. But what they are doing is pretty fantastic. Being able to like quick, especially with the integrations. That's one of the things that I think they're really nailing well, is the integration of Rhino into Formo. I mean, if it's Snapdroid or any of the other tools, right, that are doing the same thing, those integrations are so key to making that tool that stepping stone to getting to that perfect fluid workflow. Because not every designer is going to be like, some people use SketchUp. I'm not a fan, but some people use SketchUp, and so what? That's the tool that they want to use. That you got to integrate with it. Like have an integration with that, and you'll get that audience, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, that perfect sort of fluid workflow is still a bit of a dream, I think.
Yeah, what do you think about this from a practitioner side of things regarding just the number of tools? Like pre-show, before we hit record, we were I mentioned this idea of like a wood shop. You go into a wood shop, there's a lot of different tools for a lot of different reasons, right? You're going to use the table saw for this. You're going to use the bandsaw for that. You're going to use the planer for the thing. You know, it's not like you're trying to, the one tool to rule them all. You know, that tool may not do everything extremely well in any case, if that's what they're going. Like we've seen that with Revit for a long time, right? It's like this, it has to do single family residence and high rises and everything in between, right? So does it do any one of those things? It's not purpose built for any one of those in particular. And so therefore there's workarounds required. There's all kinds of things that people have to deal with to make it work for them. And yet there's still kind of this utopian vision of one tool that can do everything. And I'm just curious, okay, that's not the reality. There isn't one tool that can do it all. And there are a lot of tools that are, because of all the startups that we've seen in this space in the last 10 years, doing a few things really well. In a lot of cases, they're staying in their own lane. They're not trying to, cross over too much. And therefore, I think firms are really dealing with kind of this tool fatigue, right? It's like there's this utopian vision of one tool to do it all. Oh, but that's not the reality. We need 30 tools or 40. Like, how many tools are in your stack, Craig? If you were just to take a guess at you and Cole when you were there, like how many tools do you think are in the architectural workflow pipeline? It's probably north of 100 is my guess.
Yeah.
Not big ones. There's a few big ones, but there's a lot of things. You include graphics and presentation, and there's so many pieces to that puzzle.
Yeah. That's the headache part of the job, dealing with all those tools.
And it's a reality. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, it's like it really has the past 10 years. I mean, past 5 years, just the exponential growth in the number of tools and the number of software vendors reaching out has been it's created a kind of so the exponential sort of growth in the number of tools, and then the exponential sort of development of the tools that we already have and the changes all along, right? Has created this sort of state of continuous learning required for staff. So where at any given time you need some percentage of your staff to be trained in this latest tool, either that or have them have more specialization for architects and engineers and designers to sort of solve that issue, so they can pick up those smaller bumps in technologies and those newer tools. But with the sort of onslaught of AI and the tools around there, which there are some that look really promising. The ones that sort of review your specs using AI and do your sort of review your shop drawings and your specs. That's a cool workflow because I don't know many people who enjoy that process of going through
right.
Thousands of submittals.
Right.
Check.
Absolutely.
Make sure everything aligns with the specs and the shop drawings are right. And
oh man. And because it's such a low desirability index on those kinds of jobs, it's like people don't put their best attention on those either, and that's where a lot of things slip through the cracks. It's a tough job for sure. Yeah, I'm thinking about kind of the number of tools, and I'm glad you brought up training because that's a real aspect. Did you take that upon yourself? Did you rely on other companies? How did you implement kind of a training layer in your firm?
So, so I had a number of staff at You & Cole. Actually, most of the companies I work with had a good number of staff, so I could rely on some of them to do the training. But I also have been a proponent of using the self-paced learning tools like Eagle Point and Get Global Lead Training, because it's the value of having me train some number of staff people in using any one tool is not really, that's not the best use of my time. The self-paced learning works for a good number of people that use it. And then there's always some other group of people that need the hands-on, in-person training. So I've always made training. Training's really important because if you don't train people on the tools, and they make mistakes, they do things the wrong way, and they need to be redone. So unless you like paying twice for the work, train your people.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to tell you about something that I think is pretty great, and you might be interested in it, and that is my exclusive newsletter available only to paid members of TRXL Plus that I call Leadership Edge. If you're looking to stay ahead of the curve in architecture and technology, Leadership Edge delivers insights that you won't find anywhere else. Why? Well, because they are my deep dives into the podcast conversations, just like the one that you're listening to in this episode, to give you an edge on the industry. Each edition of the newsletter provides key insights for forward-thinking leaders seeking innovation in AEC who are short on time, offering the context of each conversation without the need to listen to the full episode. I've actually designed them, though, to keep you updated, spark your interest, and encourage you to tune into the full episodes if those ideas resonate. And the best part is that they are packed with actionable takeaways to help you navigate the future of practice. By becoming a paid supporter, you get Leadership Edge delivered right to your inbox, and it's a direct way to support my podcast while getting exclusive, valuable content to sharpen your leadership mindset. You can join today at trxl.co and start receiving my Leadership Edge newsletters. Just click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit the link that I put in the show notes. Thanks. Now back to the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those things, though, that I think a lot of firms, it's not in their line of sight because it's like, well, we just have to get the work done. We have to get the projects done. And to your point, I mean, how many times have you seen somebody doing something and you're like, oh, there's a better way to do that if you just do this. And they're like, I had no idea. It's not like they were avoiding. They just didn't know what they didn't know. And it's like, oh, thank you for telling me. And so in the case of training, then it's like putting this in front of people. And a lot of people don't even want to take the time to do it. They see training as a burden because it's taking away from their job. And so this is one of those struggles in firms, and I wanted to bring it up because I think a lot of these startups are coming at us with great new tools, but the burden of implementation is huge. I mean, even if it's a super easy tool like a chat box, you still need to know how to use it to get the best results and to get correct results, for example, right? So it's like all of these things are additional burdens on firms, and I don't think these companies necessarily realize what they're asking. Oh, it's just one more tool. Well, like I said, there's 100 tools, right? So how do we even keep our staff up to date on and everything is a moving target when it comes to this?
Yeah, that's actually one of the challenges with the self-paced learning providers, Maple Point, Get, and the others, is that the content isn't always as current as you'd like it. It's pretty current, but not as current as you'd like it. So keeping up with the latest changes to the tools and having those sort of, quarterly updates to the whatever improvements, that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of necessary. And that's, the design technology staff perfectly able to, and I think they actually enjoy it, perfectly able to teach those aspects, in lunch and learns and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the new, one of the challenges around training, for in-house developed automations. So Dynamo tool. So at Ewing Cole, we developed 130 or more than 130 different Dynamo, scripts to help with the workflow,
Mm-hmm.
different workflows in different disciplines. That was, it was just the team that who had developed those tools knew about those tools, and it was made it really difficult for anyone to sort of find what, I need to renumber all these rooms, right? Well, I know we've got a tool somewhere that does this. Where do I find that tool?
Yeah, right.
Right, huge challenge if you've got 130 tools that nitpick at all these different little tasks that always take longer than you think they do. So great idea. Use a chatbot. So we created a custom chatbot, filled it full of all the automations and the descriptions of each of the automations, what it did, and put it in the Revit toolbar. And now the staff can I have to do this sort of mass change across the document set. What's the best method of doing that? Yeah. And it'll spit back, we've got this script will do that, and this script will do that. Go here and click on it and run it.
Makes it more discoverable, right? Yeah, a lot of times there are tools just forgotten. It's somewhere on the server. I don't know. Yeah. I don't even know what it's called. Right? So,
yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's called something that makes sense.
Something descriptive. Yeah. Right.
That's not always the case, right?
No, it is not. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the difference between a user and an author, right? Is going to be, well, this is the use case. Here's my challenge, but the keywords don't match up with the name of the tool, for example, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
Absolutely. When you were doing training in your firm, you mentioned lunch and learns. Was there actual time set aside for training, or was it only in time like that, where it would be at a lunch and learn, for example?
So I had I'd asked that everyone spends an hour or two every week, doing training, learning something new.
Did their project managers still allow that to happen? That's where things get there's some friction in that process.
That's where the friction is, right?
Yeah.
Project managers need people to work, not to learn. Well,
look, it kind of doesn't make sense if you actually think about that. But yeah, that's the reality.
But it's super important for people to learn how to use the tools in order for them to get the work done faster. So it makes a whole lot of sense when you think about that, but
think bigger
in those terms. But when there's a project deliverable 5:00 on a Friday, and we've got to cram to get it done, nobody has an extra minute to spend learning a new tool. So totally understandable when you've got those that crunch time, right? That folks aren't always going to get to the training. But part of the review process that I was pushing forward, the annual review and the quarterly or biannual review, was to bring up the staff person's training, see what did they, how much time did they spend, and what did they learn, is it making an impact?
Yeah.
And for some who brought it up in their review meetings with their employees, works great. Then others didn't do it. It's hard to maintain that, unless you're sitting in every single review meeting.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
This
is a real struggle for sure. And I think about like a KPI like that in a kind of a annual or biannual goal setting session, and then a review of that session at the end. It's like a lot of employees are not in the position to get to make the decision of how they spend their time, right? And so, did you accomplish your goal of doing 20 hours of training this year, whatever it is? Well, no, because I wasn't allowed to. So, I mean, these are the things that actually happen in firms. And so to me, like, it actually makes a lot of sense to set aside a specific number of hours per month, per whatever quarter, that you just get for training, because we need it. Like, our firm only gets better if our staff gets better at using these tools.
Yeah. And that's where the lunch and learns come in to sort of help with that, because everybody's going to need lunch, right? You've got a captive audience, and you can provide them some training on important things at that time. And then another thing that we implemented were these sort of 15-minute training sessions, which people really liked. So basically, once every couple weeks, I think we were doing a 15-minute training session on a specific topic in the company lounge, really sort of casual, and whoever shows up. You could basically being in the lounge. It was open to everybody, even the people just getting a cup of coffee might accidentally learn something new. Those were surprisingly well received and effective. And 15 minutes is nothing.
It's digestible. Yeah, it's like it's not a lunch and learn, it's a snack.
Right.
So
yes,
yeah,
essentially.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. Like the attention span has also gotten shorter, so that is more digestible. Oh, okay, it's easier to get approval for, probably too, 15 minutes versus an hour, or what. Even if it is your lunch hour, which you need to get approval for that one. But a lot of people just want to go decompress from work at their lunch hour too, and not do more work. So that's still a tough decision, I think, for a lot of people to make, to even attend a training thing over lunch, because you actually feel like you're working for another hour, right? So there's all kinds of nuance to this kind of conversation topic, but these are the things that firms are actually struggling with all over the place, especially the bigger they are, the more offices they have. Like you said, you do this thing in the lounge in one office. Well, what's going on in the other offices? They're probably piped in over Teams or Zoom, and then they're sitting at their desk with headphones on while they're eating their lunch, trying to take this thing in. And it's complicated. Like, these are the realities of running a large architecture practice today.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I attempted to do is 30-second training. Like, basically tried to get the effect of a doom scrolling, Instagram type, TikTok, whatever. Get that result into sort of a training format. And people are like, here's how you do this. Boom, 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 and release that. The challenge there is, well, what I found the challenge was actually just making those videos was time consuming.
It's an enormous amount of time. I was going to say that is the biggest hurdle to get over. Is it's amazing to actually witness or do, like, how much time it takes to condense information into that short of a period and make it effective.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
We implemented a thing at HMC called skill cards, and so we had this on the intranet. It was like a whole database, and everything was filterable by category or software or keywords or whatever. And the idea was, it was a series of PowerPoint slides, and and it was like there was a max. It was like 5 slides, if I'm not recalling this correctly, but maybe that's what it was. It was like, okay, you get 5 slides to teach somebody how to do something in some piece of software, and that goes on the internet. And, you know, you can, because it's PowerPoint, you can update it. It's a dynamic document. It's not like a dead, you know, it's not like a printed piece of paper in that regard. So if the software changes, it could get updated, and yep, you maybe move the bubbles around or whatever. It wasn't video. We weren't at, this was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the hurdle of creating a polished kind of how-to presentation in 5 slides, it's a tall ask, right? It's like, who's going to give somebody the time to make one of those things? And you make it as easy as you can. You give them the templates with all of the annotations are already in there. All you got to do is move them into place. Okay, still not going to happen, right? It's like one of those things where, nope, I have a job to do, and this isn't it. And so you actually, like what we did is we ended up implementing a dedicated training team, and that was part of their job. Right? They were teaching classes, and they were sending emails, and they were doing desk to desk, and they're doing support tickets and teaching people through support tickets. And they're looking at the dashboards, looking for places where, okay, people need training on this, people need training on that because this is taking too long, the models are getting out of control, whatever those things are. And they're producing these things because then, like, their job is training. And I felt like that was the best chance we had at actually training our own employees so that our firm got better together.
Yeah, well, I mean it's fantastic that you were able to basically sell that idea and having a dedicated training team, because that's, I mean, selling the idea of training is difficult, and having just like someone on staff that was doing that, it's fantastic. I always trying to, you know, have my design technology team, you know, take on different responsibilities there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
well, it is one of those difficult parts of actually running a practice is keeping everybody up to date on the latest tools. And like you said, there's more and more tools. We're inundated. Somebody said recently, like it's like a multitude of fire hoses. They're all,
yes.
It's not just one fire hose; it's a multitude of fire hoses that we're dealing with. Well, I'm curious, kind of where you, like I mentioned in the beginning, you've had a recent change in your career. So let's talk about that as we kind of finish out the episode here. What are you up to now, and what are you offering?
Yeah, so I left Ewing Cole a few months ago, and was looking through my career of being a director of design technology and basically essentially CTO level technology leader at AEC firms, and I was like, wow, you know what? I look a heck of a lot like a consultant, like a technology strategist. Why don't I try and do that for a while? And so you know, I put my shingle on the door and created a website, barbieri.biz, and I'm helping firms, mid-sized firms, because large firms have the resources to have someone on staff for sure, but mid-sized firms to help them keep up with and get the most out of the different technologies that they have access to, and help them sort of wade through the artificial intelligence, you know, ocean of tools and efficiencies. I'm a huge proponent of artificial intelligence and what it can do for us. I'm an optimist. I don't know what you call that, a bloomer or a, you know, there are differences. There's a gloomer, a doer, a bloomer, and a something else. Anyway, zoomer. That's Reid Hoffman's Super Agency book.
Okay.
If you talks about that. Anyway,
cool.
So I'm helping firms sort of wade through all of that, and hopefully get to help some.
It's nice that you can take this kind of wide experience that you've had in all of the categories of AEC that you were applying and take it to a broader audience. I mean, that to me is, there's a huge value in that, because a lot of firms, especially the mid-sized firms like you're talking about, don't have the resources, the dedicated resources to do this kind of thing, but the competition is fierce, right? And so anything that they can do to kind of raise their digital IQ, their technology IQ is going to be huge. So the value's there. I would encourage them to reach out to you because you have the experience of doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, one of the other reasons why I sort of headed down this road is because a longtime friend of mine who's now a partner at a firm asked me to come in and talk about AI to their firm, and about the size that I'm sort of targeting, and I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense for someone like me. So
when people are asking you to do something, Craig, that's a good sign for sure. It's a good sign. Awesome. Well, thanks for having this conversation. I think it puts a light on the real challenges of implementing technology in a firm and staying up to date and training staff. I know we spent a lot of time talking about training staff, but like that, where the rubber meets the road. I mean, you can implement tools all day long, but if nobody uses them, who cares, right? It's just a big waste of money and time and effort.
Yeah,
so
100%.
I appreciate you doing that. So we'll put links where people can get in contact with you in the show notes for this episode. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Great. Thanks, Evan. It's been, it's been nice. It's been good to talk.